Hello and welcome to the Multifamily and More Expert Series, where we dive deep into a specific topic with our expert guests in the area of real estate, mindset, or anywhere in between. Today's guests, Vince Gethings and Duke Ong, are the owners, runners, operators of the Tri-City Equity Group, which is a multifamily holding company, and they're also the hosts of the Honolulu version of this very organization, Multifamily and More. Vince, Duke, welcome.
How's it going, Jamie?
Right. Good. So you guys, pretty exciting stuff. You guys just closed on a property, not in Hawaii where you live, but in, I believe, El Paso, Texas. So let's get into that. We're going to dive deep on that today, just kind of get into this deal. Congrats to you for closing on it. How did you choose El Paso, Texas as a market?
Well, El Paso is one of the bigger cities in Texas, surprisingly. Got over 900,000 population, sixth largest city. The last recession saw job losses of under 3%. Cost of living is a lot lower, 11.5% lower than the U.S. average. And another surprising stat is the sixth safest city in the U.S. It's the highest one in Texas.
Really?
Yeah, like it's
isn't
really
that like right on the border of Mexico and like where all
Yep.
the gunfire comes across? That's one of the safest cities, really?
Yeah, I
you'd
couldn't
be-
believe it either.
Yeah, I mean,
But
it's
it's there.
great because, Juarez is right there. And that together with Juarez, that makes the Borderplex region. It's home to about 70 Fortune 500 companies, so a lot of manufacturing base. Largest employer is Fort Bliss with around 50,000 jobs. So a pretty stable source of...
Dude, you're making me want to move to El Paso.
Yeah,
Better weather than Michigan.
Yeah, so I met you in Michigan, the Michigan market and everything. That was my market, and then so Jamie, after we closed that deal, the Tri-City area, with Steve from the group.
Yep.
He and our other partner, who's actually in the Army, was stationed at Fort Bliss. They started roping the rest of the group down at El Paso, and same thing. I was like, El Paso. I'm like, that's. I'm like, I'm not really sure about the area and like all this stuff. And then, they start sending me links. I'm looking up and do my own research on the market, like city data and stuff like that. I'm like, holy crap. Like this place is like legit, 70 Fortune 500 companies in that area. Like that's a huge concentration of manufacturing, stable jobs.
Yeah.
And then the whole crime thing, like, looking up crime mapping or the crime reports or the crime index number on city data. It's crazy low. It's insane how safe that city is as a whole. So I was sold, and then even after I went there, we went down there to do our research on the ground there, boots on the ground. We flew it down there, and same thing, like walking that city, like how clean it is, how that pride of ownership people have there, even in the lower income areas. I was like super like pleasantly surprised on just the whole population of the culture there and everything. So,
Yeah, I mean, look, I guess I should have known better than to doubt you, especially. I've known you, Vince, a bit. Like you're analytical, you dig deep into the metrics, and I think that's a key takeaway that you both are articulating right now. Is like, El Paso. You could easily dismiss it just on the fact that it's called El Paso, and you've heard story A or story B in the news, or you can do what you guys did, which is dig in deep. Duke just articulated a ton of stats that make it a very attractive market. In fact, cat's out of the bag now, guys. You just let people know to look in El Paso. But you did your research, you did your due diligence to figure out that, hey, this is actually a market we like a lot. So that's very cool. So how'd you find this property in particular? Like, what did that process look like? And give us some stats on it as well. Like, what size is it? And B class, C class, and then how'd you find it?
So actually, it was listed on LoopNet. Surprisingly, the listing broker, we've had a previous relationship with them because we submitted offers on other properties through them before. So having built that relationship, that really helped us to win the deal. And there were other potential buyers, but we came in fast. Like as soon as they got the listing, listed it on LoopNet, we submitted our LOI. So we were able to lock it up pretty quickly. And yeah, so
what size is the property again, Duke? I'm sorry. How many units?
So it's a 48 unit. So the story is we initially offered on 58 out of the 96 units they had listed. So it's 3 properties total. It was a 48 and a 10 and 38. So we offered on 2 out of those 3 properties, the 48 and the 10. And then the LOI, the structure is we had a feasibility of 45 days, 75-day close, so pretty standard. But we did have the option to extend the feasibility by 30 days with an additional EMD of $5,000. And that turned out to be crucial because we needed that in order to sort out the uncertainty, with the current market conditions of COVID-19. So that really helped. And throughout the process, we actually renegotiated twice. So Vince can cover that.
Yeah, let's hear about that.
Yeah, so like you were saying, the original property is 96 units. We carved it down to 58, so the 48 and the 10. And then after we got there, so during our on-the-ground due diligence there, we decided the 10 unit didn't fit our business plan that we were going to. It was about 20 years older, needed a lot more renovations to bring it up to market. It was a 50% occupied. So it didn't fit our business plan. So we went and carved that out on the first free trade. Was okay. We only want the 48 units. They're mid 80s build, so relatively newer. Everything's up to code. Doing our due diligence there. So we did. Trying to remember how much we ended up retrading. I don't remember. Was it? Well, let's do
this. Are you comfortable getting into some numbers on the pricing, the negotiation, or would you rather not?
Yeah, we can cover some of that. So the original offer was, I think, around $2 million.
This was for all 96 or for 40 or for 58?
For 58.
So $2 million for 58. Okay.
Yep. So right around there. Then we carved the 10 unit out and then took those down. The 10 unit out for that, and then we ended up retrading again for some capex. I think we got another 80,000 or so for price reduction for capex. So that brought our cost basis down somewhere around 34,000 a door.
Okay.
Yep.
So you ended up. So yeah, the 2 million was 34,000 and change a door that you started at. When you carved out the 10 units. You took the price down and got a capex carve out to keep it pretty much at or just below, like you were almost 35 a door, so you got it down to 34 a door essentially.
Yeah. I think we started at 36. So the 2 million was like 36 a door.
Okay.
And then after carving the 10 unit out and getting the price reduction for the capex, it came down to about 34.5 a door. Is about where we were landed at. And then we were pretty confident there. Our underwriting that we did. They were around 80% occupied at the time. So they had all the traits of our value adds that we look for. So opportunities to increase income, improve management, put in our processes, our systems, to get the property just performing efficiently. And as you know, with the other deal we talked about, the one in Michigan, I'm not a big like value add. I don't go do and do huge renovations and jump rents $200 or $300. That I'm into light renovations. I focus on operations and efficiencies from managing properly. That's my bread and butter. That's where I put all my focus on. So when I'm looking for deals for value add, that's what I'm focusing on things that I can see that either management's not doing right or that I know I can do better, leveraging my knowledge or my systems or just technology. A lot of these, a lot of buyers or sellers and operators just don't leverage technology, like things like Rently. Like I talked to somebody about Rently, and they might not know have never even heard of that company or what Rently is. But that's a new technology that we're forcing to accept if you want to survive, to do remote showings and stuff like that. So that's a big part of my strategy.
We dive into that, Vince, because you've done some really good videos. I've seen you do some lives in the Honolulu group around that exact point. Like you're very consistent with that. Like, hey, look, I go in and I look for operating efficiency. Like income is one thing, but controlling the outflow is the more important thing to you, controlling the expense.
Yeah.
What are some things that you look for or maybe saw on this property or just sort of generally that you have in your mind when you're looking at a property to say, okay, I can already see leakage here, here, and here, or maybe this property was a little unique. I'm not sure, but I'll let you take that however you want to. But what are some things people could take away from that?
Use one of my favorite ones right there, leakage.
Leakage.
So water bills. That's a these properties. Most of them are going to be this vintage. 70s, 80s, and even 90s. Master metered water, and a lot of operators aren't doing any kind of RUB, ratio utility billing, bill back for the water bill, or they don't have any like water conservation devices in there. So that's one of the first things I do is I put low flow. Those little low flow screw-in things on all the faucets, on the shower heads, put them down to 1.5 GPM, and just that alone will cut our expense, our water bill down 20-30% just from that. Go in day one and replace all of the toilet flapper valves from all the leaky toilets. They can be 10-15 years old when they only have a shelf life of only every 5 years or so. You're supposed to replace that rubber seal. So there's just a lot of the toilets just running nonstop.
When do you get to that? Do you see that only when you're doing physical due diligence to say, okay, water conservation, I see an opportunity, or do you have some indication in advance?
No, I just do it.
You just, what do you mean you just do it?
Like day one, like I'm doing it regardless. Like I don't wait until the units turn over.
No, I mean, like, how do you recognize that there might be an opportunity with water conservation when you're doing your underwriting? Is it?
I ask them. I just ask them, like, hey, what are they doing for water? Well, a lot of it you can see the bills too. Like just on your, I call it utility audit, right? So I'm looking at their utility bills, power, gas, water, trash, and you're kind of going through and looking at what they're paying. And then you're going to the market and like, okay, what is a normal waste management contract for this property look like? And they might just have, an outdated contract where they can cut 20-30% off their trash disposal or their waste disposal just by calling and asking or trading to a new company. But they're just, a lot of them are just stuck in the ways. They don't want to change a contract. They don't want to shop around to get a better deal. So stuff like that. And
how are you determining the market on that? I'm sorry, like on water or on trash, how are you determining what the market rate should be?
Well, trash, I just call, all the providers. Water and power, I call the utility companies and see what they will tell me. A lot of them, they won't. Some of them, they'll give you very basics, but they won't give you specifics because I don't have a property in that market. A lot of it's just asking around, talk to property managers, talk to the brokers a little bit, but mainly the property managers. They'll have a good pulse on what a water bill should look like or what power should look like.
Good tip.
Like and like, hey, you might have some issues like, if they're gas for propane for heaters, and I can look and see that their gas bills unseasonably high, in the summer or something like that, then I'd be like, okay, well, they might have an issue where whoever's doing the unit turns isn't turning. They don't have the system to have the checklist to turn the thermostat down when somebody moves out. So something as easy as that, because then if you have an extended vacancy, now you have and this happened, we had to integrate it for Michigan, was physically put in the checklist for when a move out, turn thermostat down to whatever, 60. Because if the resident moves out, they have it on 85, they move out, and it takes us, a couple weeks to turn that unit. I'm going to get a bill for $200-300. So extrapolate that to a property that's 50 units. Now you're spending, over, thousands of dollars on utilities every month, just from operations, just from things that you can control, every aspect of that.
I think there's such wisdom in this, especially in the age of Corona, which is when we're taping this. You see a lot of companies that whether it's real estate or otherwise that have linked themselves to revenue, right? Like revenue drives everything. So as long as the trend graph is going up and to the right, then you're doing okay. But the second that trend graph stops, you're not going up and to the right. Then the outflow, which may exceed your inflow, but you're able to kind of stay ahead of it because of revenue. The outflow then becomes a problem, and you see jobs cut immediately, or certain measures taken immediately, bankruptcies filed or whatever. You're talking about running lean, running the operation on a certain profit margin, no matter what, to make sure that Corona, no Corona, whatever it may be, you're as lean as you possibly can be from an expense perspective.
Yep. And as an operator, I think anybody that plans on being hands-on in operations, they should be very focused on their budgets, and have very strict KPIs that they're shooting for, key performance indicators, to make sure that they're not slipping and letting these expenses pile up on them. Because I think I said in one of my other videos that the color of a dollar as income and the color of a dollar of expense isn't the same. Meaning the expense dollar to me is worth more when it comes to NOI. So the whole game in this is NOI, right? So every dollar I save on expense goes straight to my NOI, increases it. Every dollar I increase in my income isn't a dollar increased on my NOI. It's not the same color because I take that dollar income. Now I have to take out property management. Now there's fixed costs associated with every single dollar of income that isn't the same as expense. So, dollar income might be, a 60% increase in 60 cents added to the NOI, where an expense is that's a whole dollar. Yeah. Right. So that's why that fact alone, if you can understand that, that's why I focus so much on, like you said, running lean and operations and scrutinizing, budgets and stuff like that.
I want to talk about how you guys funded this deal in a moment, but before that, I want to kind of take it step by step. So you found the property, you found the market. We discussed how you did great analysis on that. Found the property on LoopNet, which, by the way, I think everybody says surprisingly on LoopNet, and people are finding deals on LoopNet. So it's becoming like not so surprisingly that you can actually find deals on LoopNet if you use that as a source. So you guys are evidence of that. You analyzed this deal. We talked about the 58 down to 48 and kind of the haggling there. I want to go back to that negotiation pre acceptance of the LOI. Before you go under contract. Give me a little more on that negotiation. What did that look like? Did you any tactics that either of you used? Anything that you guys did that you think would be interesting for folks to hear about as far as how you negotiated this deal? Some things you did to try to get your optimum price.
Yeah. So we did our contract that we actually had signed was for the 58 units. We were under contract on all 58, and then we ended up carving out the 58 with an addendum. For negotiating tactics, a lot of it is just understanding, trying to find those big word that's out now, black swan, right? Everybody's talking about the black swan events. So same thing, right? Try to find what the motivations are for the sellers, and if you're dealing with an intermediary like a broker between you, it's going to be much harder because everything is going through, the broker, and then the broker's going to and they're going to be that barrier. So not a lot of those indicators come through, but you still want to figure out what the motivations are of the seller and frame everything to solve their problems. I think that's the best. There's all these negotiating tactics and everything, and the psychology points of it and all that. The best thing you can do is figure out what the seller's problems are and solve them. That's, entrepreneurship 101, solve people's problems.
If you can do that,
What's that?
That's a great reminder. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So solve people's problems and how you want to do that, whatever kind of tactics you want to employ to do that. That's the best thing is solve people's problems. When you're dealing with somebody like a broker, you have to know the best thing in negotiating tactic for that. It's not really a tactic, it's just more preparation. It is spend time to if you're going to have an hour phone call with a broker, especially on something as serious as retrading, because something you found, you should spend like 5 hours preparing for that phone call, making sure that your market, so El Paso, extremely well. Making sure that this class of property, so this is a C-class property, CC plus property. Making sure that this sub-market of where it's at, what neighborhood it's in. Making sure the class of property. Because if you're dealing with a broker that's experienced and you start going off and be like, oh, well, I have to retrade because of this, this, and this, and this, and you're trying to spin a story of like telling them that the property's crap and the sellers, are horrible at operating, like all these things wrong with the property's falling down, it's condemned, whatever. They're going to call you out really quick. And if they know that you don't know what you're talking about. So you need to spend the time to know your market. So you have the credibility, you have the knowledge. So you just don't make yourself look dumb, I guess is that, like, cause they'll call you out. Like if you say something like, that's a blatant, not true to that market or that kind of property in that market, they're going to call you out, and then you're going to lose a lot of credibility. And
Makes
they're going to
sense.
do what you're trying to do. Like you're just deploying cheap tactics. So be authentic, know your stuff going into a call, and when you're negotiating, and solve their problems. The only other thing I have is if you're dealing with brokers or sellers, take like some personality tests or like some of those books that like give you the skills to like read a person's personality. Like this person's very analytical. Mm-hmm. So then if you know that about them, you can talk about the numbers. But if you start talking about, well, here's my numbers of my underwriting and this is why I can only offer this, and they're not an analytical person, they're like an empathetic person, it's going right over their head. They're not processing your super analytical number. So that has helped a lot, like knowing who you're talking to, so you can frame the conversation to how they receive information.
That makes perfect. Our mentor, Jake and Gino specifically gets into disc profiles, right? I think that's kind of his thing. We talked about kids at the beginning of this barging in. I got one playing the drums and dogs barking, so I apologize to you guys on that, but hopefully it's not too loud in the background. So Duke, I think you're going to talk a bit about how you funded this deal, how you structured and funded this particular deal. So just pulled a couple million out of your pocket and paid for it, I'm assuming?
I wish. No, I mean, it didn't really require that much, though. Our raise is only 650 grand. So we structured it with 506B syndication. So pre-existing relationships. So these are all people that we've already built relationships with from the past. And we brought in 11 outside investors in the limited partnership. And so we have 4 managers, so 4 of us on the general partnership. So we contributed about 155,000. It took us about 3 weeks to be fully funded. I mean, those 3 weeks were like the main part of it, but there was a lot of work and a lot of time going into, prepping everything and getting it ready before the funding period even began.
Well, really, before you go into that, can you talk about that? Maybe again, some tips or advice on getting your investor class ready. You mentioned you had a 506B, you had your investors, but was it just we found deal and then we started making calls to all of our investor friends, or was there? I'm assuming there was some preparation in advance of that, some relationships built, some time, some energy put into these people that are going to invest with you before you just suddenly had a deal for them to invest in. Is that right?
Oh yeah. I mean, these relationships have been built over years. Like this is not something that you can just do overnight and just turn it on. So. Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of building a trust and building rapport with investors, and just putting them on our list and sending out the notice like once we got it under contract. And then out of the people that we sent the email to, there's a certain group that would be interested. They would raise a hand, and then we would set up further calls to kind of go over the deal. We held several webinars explaining the deal. And also one-on-one calls with investors to kind of answer their questions and just go over the deal further.
Manage the relationship, right? So no, that makes perfect sense. Now, as far as financing it, did you have certain terms you were shooting for, and how close did you get to those? I guess would be the question with your lender.
Yeah, so initially we had 3 lenders that we were working with. One of them gave us the best terms, so we were working with them mostly exclusively initially. And then, so the interest rate that we were promised initially was 4.75, and it was a 20-year AM. They were promising 75% loan to value initially, but they then retraded to 65% loan to value, which pretty much killed the deal for us because it just didn't meet the underwriting requirements. So then we scrambled and went to one of our backup lenders who ended up offering us an even better interest rate because of market conditions that changed since then at 3.63. The
same 20 years? 20 years or?
So that even better M, so 25-year M, and they were able to stick with the 75% loan to value that they promised us. And the best part about that loan is there's no prepayment penalty,
Nice.
Which gives us a lot of flexibility as far as exit strategy. So if we needed to, we could hold it for longer. We refinance or sell early. We won't have any yield maintenance risk. So that's huge for us. It's a community bank that we went with.
Well, I was going to ask you that. What's the distinction? So I'm assuming did the loan retrade because of the COVID-19, the coronavirus? Is that what happened? Or
The
did
first
they?
lender, yeah. And we'll talk. I got a point on that too after we talk about lending, about how Corona affected us.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the first bank, they retraded because of Corona.
Which I get. So what's the distinction? Again, teaching some folks here. So why did one lender back down to 65% and only give you 20-year amortization with 4.75, where lender number two in the same time said, I'll stick it to 75, I'll give you a point off plus and 5 more years amortization? Like why? Well, community bank you mentioned. What was the difference between the two lenders, if there was any? Do you know? I'm not sure.
Well, for the one we went with, he's very optimistic about El Paso. So that bank is very, very bullish on El Paso, very confident in the market, and our business plan for this deal, I think, was one of the biggest factors. So them just being very confident in El Paso, and then us, the business plan we submitted wasn't like, we're gonna, like I said earlier, we don't go in and like, I'm gonna raise rents $400 on a C-class property, by only putting in $500 a unit. Like we don't put these outlandish. It's very, very sound, very conservative business plan. Phased approach, and I think that gave them a lot of confidence.
Gotcha. Was the first lender a larger, like a national player or agency or something like that? Like what was the first lender type that you ended up?
It was still a community bank.
Oh, no kidding. But it's just so, I think it's such an important lesson. I talk about this when I bought my first duplexes. I called 12 banks, and like the 11th bank was the one I got the terms I wanted. Like everybody kept telling me, oh, you'll get the terms, you'll get the terms. Like everyone's telling me it's this, right? Because, certain banks didn't want to do certain things. Like one of them was saying, yeah, we won't loan to you if any college students rent from you. And we didn't intend to rent to college students, but if we needed to, I didn't want that to be an issue. But the point is, having multiple relationships with multiple banks like you guys established, it gave you the ability to go to another bank who just has a different take on, that asset class and what they want their money to go to. So kudos to you guys having backup options like that.
Yep, and that's a huge factor for just community banks in general. Like, yeah, sometimes they can swing more conservative. Like you said, we don't like Section 8 or we don't like college students or something like that.
Yeah.
But then they can go completely the other direction because they're in complete control. If they're a community bank, they can do whatever they want. Because they're normally holding the note. It's a portfolio loan, so they have a lot of flexibility. So if you can convince their board of your business plan and stuff like that, you can get oftentimes a lot of favorable terms. The downside of most community bank or all community banks is it's going to be recourse though. Mm-hmm. So that's something you have to balance. Like, yeah, they're most likely going to give you favorable terms. They're going to be a lot more flexible to work with you in your business plan, but it's still recourse.
Well, and we're going to talk about repositioning in a second. I'll be curious to hear what your strategy is, but to that end, I just think it's such a great point that it is a people business. At the end of the day, like banks are not just putting you into a system and spitting out a number like that's what it is. Like that's just the amortization or whatever that you're going to get. It depends on that bank, their confidence in you, your business plan, how well you respond to them. People. At the end of the day, it's about people. So I think that's fantastic. Curious, because I haven't gotten this yet. Did you get any interest only on this or no?
We did. The first lender offered us 12 months interest only. The second lender, the one we went with, did not. So They gave us a lower rate. They gave us a longer AM, but they didn't do an interest only period.
Great terms. Yeah. Great terms. 3.6%.
What it ended up being like $1,700 a month difference between the mortgage payment, the P&I. And that only going from 4.7 to 3.6 something was $1,700 a month less.
I bet you. Sorry.
No, so it was $1,700 a month less in our mortgage payments.
I'll bet you the interest only wouldn't have even mattered at that. You're probably paying the same amount as you were with the interest only.
It was close. Yeah, it was close.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Good for you guys, man.
Yeah, one of the lessons learned from that whole thing was we should have kept engagement with all the lenders all at the same time instead of just picking one and working exclusively with them, because that kind of cost us a little bit of time. I mean, we still got the deal closed on time, but it was getting close. Like I would have been more comfortable if we had just kept engaging that second lender that we ended up going with throughout the whole time. Then we would have gotten everything done like early instead of barely cutting it. But
we would have been able to close early. Yeah.
That's awesome.
The third lender was a bridge lender, and they were going to give us IO and all these pretty good terms, but they ended up just backing out completely because of COVID. So that's another reason why you want to have multiple options and you want to stay engaged with them the entire time, like until you finally, get down to the wire.
That's great. And
Yeah,
the fact that you guys,
that's a huge point. Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying like to Duke's point, like we had 3 lenders, and I've done this pretty much in all my deals, and luckily it hasn't bit me in the butt yet. But after this deal, I'm like, it just drives home that point. Like if you have 3 lenders, you're running all 3 packages concurrently. Where a lot of people like they might cast a net that said, okay, I'm going to go to 5 lenders. Here's my package. But then whoever gives them the best terms, they go with that one, and then all the other ones kind of fall to the wayside. But then if this guy backs out, which happened to us, now all of a sudden you're scrambling to get these guys back up to speed. You're like, oh yeah, remember the package? I haven't talked to you in a month. Like, let's go. And now all of a sudden you're a month behind. So the lesson learned is when you cast your net out like that, like run all 3 packages through underwriting. Like keep engaging each bank the entire time until they give you that commitment letter. Because exactly what happened. So huge lesson learned on us.
No, I've done the same thing. So that's I wrote it down. That's a great lesson for me. That's fantastic to hear. So, okay, that's very good. Let's move to reposition. So you've got this property. Congrats again, 48 units in your portfolio. What's the next step? You mentioned you're not putting 500 in and raising 400 in rents every month. I get that. So what's the reposition strategy, timeline, and exit for that matter?
Yeah, so we normally run a 3-year, so 36-month reposition plan. So phase 1 goes from 0 month to about 9 to 12 months, and that's going to be taking over, assessing operations, assessing the tenants or the resident base, looking at a lot of lease management at that time, figuring out who the month-to-months are. We do this thing that's called it's almost like a probationary period. When we get over when we take over a property, a lot of people they try to drive for stabilization as fast as possible. And what they end up doing is they end up locking in or renting to residents that don't meet the profile that they're trying to get this community or this property up to. All right. So like say for month to month. So a lot of lenders, they don't like month to month. People don't like month to month because it's not stabilized. So they'll go to all the month to month tenants, get them on 1-year leases, and like, okay, we're good. And then 2-3 months later, find out that month to month person probably isn't somebody that you want at your property and doesn't fit if you're trying to reposition the property and go up a notch, a C to a B or something like that, or C to a C plus, they don't fit that profile. So now you're hampering your long-term plan. So instead of doing that, and the same thing with filling vacancies. I think we had like 10 vacancies at closing. So a lot of people do the knee-jerk reaction of hurry up, fill 10 vacancies as fast as possible, so we're stabilized. And that'll be good for short term, but if you're buying a property that's in distress, or has deferred maintenance and stuff like that, and it needs work, exterior work, making the community better to attract a better resident, it's not going to work if you're trying to fill these units, but you haven't done any of that work yet. So you're just going to keep getting the same residents as you've been getting, as the place has been getting, because that's what being attracted to that property. So a lot of people will do that. They'll try to just fill it up and stabilize as fast as possible. So we do kind of this 3-month hold where we evaluate the resident base. We do a lot of the exterior modifications first. So a lot of that exterior deferred maintenance. We're going to restripe, reseal the parking lot, a lot of landscaping, a lot of exterior lighting, just make the place brighter, put some fresh breath in there, make it look nice. And then we can start running our ads and go heavy on our marketing, because then it'll attract, our pictures will look better, our showings will look better, the grounds will look better, attract, better resident. So
justifies your market price too, right? Justifies the new price you're putting on these units. So yeah.
Yep. So that's our phase 1. So that happens in 0 to 12 months, and then a lot of the CapEx stuff, like I said, it's either going to be exterior modifications or all the safety stuff we found at during due diligence. So if there was stuff that was out of code or stuff that was anything safety related, so stairs or whatever it is, that's the stuff we knock out immediately. Anything safety. and then go into those exterior mods. So mainly phase one. Then we start going to phase two. Now we're going to start into those value adds. We're going to start, filling those units up with high rents, adding the rubs, the water bill back, any other additional income things that we can find. Maybe we can start adding pet fees because we installed a pet park and stuff like that. Cable contracts, stuff like that. We brought in a cable contract, which are pretty awesome. And now we can start doing bill backs for these cable contracts, these exclusivity contracts. And that's going to be in phase two. So rubs or additional income, leasing up to market is going to be a lot of the phase two, and a lot of those other CapEx items that to bring the property up to the market value or wherever we want it. Phase three goes into, okay, now we're at the property stabilized. We have it repositioned for the most part. Now we're going into that seasoning period, and that usually starts somewhere around the third to fourth year, depending. We go into that seasoning period where we start seasoning that rent roll and everything like that for disposition.
Makes sense.
Ideally, the fifth year.
Got it. Okay, so 5 years total. So, in the interim, is this a size where you feel like you could have on-site management, or do you have management off-site on this property?
Off-site.
Off-site. Okay, so you have a management company you've networked with. I was going to ask you. You guys have managed properties remotely at this point. Like you're in Hawaii. Everything's remote. There's an ocean away from everything.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Anything that you would give advice on there? Because I know some people get freaked out about that. I have some property that's remote. We've done some things to kind of mitigate. I don't think it's as scary as people make it out to be. But what are some things that maybe you've done to ensure that this property in El Paso, this property in Michigan are running effectively?
Hire good property companies. Yeah. So
and communication.
Yeah.
Communication and systems. That's really key. Is keeping your property manager accountable. So we have regular, at least weekly calls with our property managers, and we have KPIs that we track, occupancy, that kind of stuff, and bad debt, and managing all the bad debt and managing all the leases and balances and all that. So we keep a pretty tight pulse on our property managers and keep them accountable to the various initiatives that we're trying to put out. Kind of real quick, one other thing about value add in our phase two is there's a leasing office. So you mentioned the on-site leasing. So previously they had on-site leasing office, which we felt was unnecessary for 48 unit. So we're going to convert that leasing office into rentable space. So that's an additional 49th unit that we're going to bring on once we get to that phase.
Huge.
And we'll add like $80,000 in value.
I was going to say that's huge. That's huge. I've looked at properties like that's why you got to look at like something that says a 16 unit. I remember seeing one that was like a double unit for the manager who wasn't paying rent, and then there was 2 units not listed that were in that 16 that were actually storage for the owner. He just stored his stuff in there. So there's like 3 additional units. It's a 19 unit, not a 16 unit. So that's an incredible value.
Things you got to look for, right? There's and that's not on like the OM, right? That they give you. No. It's like you go there and you're just like, wait a second, what's this 1,400 square foot, empty building? Yeah. So, thanks Duke for bringing that up, reminding me of that. Yeah, and that's something we didn't even underwrite for. It's in our plan, it's in our business plan, but that's something like we're not counting on that to happen. So when it happens, as we round into the end of phase 2 and we start doing that renovation, that's going to be like total icing on the cake. Like a cost seg. Like most people don't underwrite for a cost seg, but when they get that K1 back, like that's some pretty good icing, right?
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how we put that stuff, like the additional income that we generate, the additional buildings, the units, and then the cost seg is like just icing on the cake for our investors. So
interesting. So we can keep a couple quick things. So disposition, are you selling at the end? Is that the plan, or do you plan to refi?
We'll see what the market looks like at that 3-year to 4-year term. We'll start looking at once we get stabilized, start seasoning. We'll start looking at, okay, did rates change? Did the market change? Did we reach our NOI target? Because in our business plan, we, okay, if we hit this NOI target, we're going to sell, if the cap rates are still where they're at. So that's when we start we have the loan that gives us a lot of flexibility. So we can go out to, was it 15 years? We have a 15-year loan.
You have
so
a
that's like a whole
term on this thing?
Yeah. So
like we have, like when I'm saying like we have flexibility, like we can go through an entire market cycle.
Or two.
Or two, right? If it's 7 years, 7 years cycles. Without having to worry, without having that stress of like, okay, I'm going to have a balloon. I need to do something. You know, we have to refinance, we have to sell. So our plan is to sell. If we have to hold because we're going through a recession, you know, we can hold literally through an entire recession and sell on the next upswing.
I mean, that's amazing. Great job, honestly, on the financing terms. That's fantastic. Are you kidding me? I mean, these are like, it's unbelievable. Congrats to both of you on that. You've done well for you and for your investors. So, all right, let's talk about some key learnings that you had from this this whole endeavor. I don't know if Corona is a component of it or not, but what are some things you guys would take away? Some things you could let people know that you learned from this?
Dude.
So I guess just back to the Corona thing. That was one of the kind of more stressful times of our even though we had the capital raised, fully funded in the bank account, we still have to account to our investors, being fiduciaries. So it was our obligation to get a discount for the uncertainty that we're facing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another huge negotiation that, you know, it took us many hours to prepare, you know, just for like a 1 hour call with the broker. But
whole weekend we prepared for that because we actually decided, so like on Friday or Thursday, you know, it was a Thursday, Friday, we decided that we were out of the deal. Like there's no way, because it was like the world's ending. You talk to, you see like the podcast from like Neil Bawa and stuff like that. Like it's the world's ending, you know, plan for 50% vacancy over the next, you know, forever. Can you hear those planes?
I heard one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's some freedom flying, F-22. There's another one. Hold on.
Lightly here.
So like Thursday, Friday, like we were out of the deal. Like there's no way, like we need a $200,000 discount or something like that to make this work based off of the underwriting guidance that we were getting like that week. So we actually called and was like, this is, you know, like I think we're too far apart. Like we don't even want to come back. Like everybody's freaking out. Like all my friends or all my colleagues, like they're dropping out of deals left and right. Everybody's backing out. Everybody's freezing. So it was a super stressful week. And then we spent pretty much the whole weekend, you know, talking to everybody. I called Gino, you know, got him on the phone. Like, hey, you know, can you help me out here? Like, talk me off this ledge. What's going on? Like, what would you do to save this deal? So he, you know, obviously lifesaver, and gave me some awesome points. Ended up being the week that I just happened to talk to Chris Voss as well. So that was awesome.
That's helpful.
Also, thanks to Gino, Jake and Gino. Then we just started just spending, you know, us for just hours and hours and hours just figuring out what all the you know, the top operators are doing right now, how they're underwriting deals, what kind of contingencies are they putting in. And then by Sunday, Monday, we were able to work the numbers to figure out like, okay, what would make this deal work? And then kind of as like a last ditch, called the brokers, and like I said, we spent at least 72 hours preparing for that 1 hour phone call, less than an hour phone call.
I got to tell you, I think a lesson I'm hearing out of this, and I might even name this podcast. This is the power of your network. You just mentioned how, like, by having people that you could relate, you know, like call and say, hey, you know, what are you doing? This is what I'm doing. And then go to a guy like Gino who can connect you to Chris Voss. If you don't know who he is, Never Split the Difference, former hostage negotiator, fantastic book, and get you to a place where you just closed when everyone else isn't, on a 48-unit property in apparently the safest city in Texas nobody knew about. That's unbelievable. The power of your network is an underlying theme here. If I'm taking that out of your mouth, I apologize if you were going to say that, but that's huge. But continue. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that was it. We ended up having to retrade to give us that extra security, because nobody knew, you know, nobody at the time. Still, we don't know what the next couple months look like. This was all before the stimulus and everything ever happened. So right on the onset of when the coronavirus started getting serious. So nobody knew. So we're like, we need this much of, we did our numbers based off of reserves.
Mm-hmm.
So we need this much of P&I reserves in order to give us and our investors the security to move forward. And we ended up getting a pretty good amount, which gave us like a year's worth of mortgage payments pretty much up front. So we were able to get that and move forward with the deal. That gave us the security, even with our super conservative underwriting that we did. And we stress test the crap out of it to make sure that it would still work. It did. The extra reserves, and this time we didn't get a price reduction. We got a cash credit at closing. So that's how we structured that, and that gave us a lot of liquidity at closing.
Nice.
Yeah, so it ended up being a $70,000 seller credit and all of April's rents, which worked out to be a total of like $88,915. Nice. And so that the key to getting a seller credit versus a reduction in the price is that it's straight liquidity, as opposed to a reduction in the price. Like the loan is a part of that, so you only get your equity portion of that. So, and that turned out to be huge because right as we got that, the lender put a new requirement on us to have 12 months of P&I in reserves frozen that we can't touch until we pass a year and prove that our DSCR is still the same or higher. So then that credit was needed in order to fulfill the lender requirements and still have the working capital and the CapEx that we've already allocated to do our project. So that was huge because the liquidity is the biggest issue when it comes to downturns, and being able to weather it is just being able to have the reserves to ride it through to the other side. So
that makes total sense. Helps to have that $1,700 off a month too, right? And if you're for P&I, if you're holding 12 months of P&I in reserves, helps to have, God, what is that? 25 grand, back in your pocket for that year as well. So I think I'm doing that math right. 17,000.
Yeah.
No, but like that 1,700.
Oh, the 7. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like that times 12. I was trying to 17,000 plus 2 more months. So whatever that is, 20 grand.
Yeah.
20,400, something like that.
Absolutely.
So that's great. All right. What are some tools that you guys would recommend? Some things you may have leveraged in order to get this deal done, beginning to end.
So one tool that we use for Investor Portal is Groundbreaker. They're kind of a newer investor portal company, but they have the full security, 256-bit encryption and all that. So we're leveraging that to communicate with our investors. And the nicest thing about them is that we can do ACH disbursements through the platform. So we don't have to deal with checks and checks being lost in the mail and so forth.
One-stop shop, right? Everything's in and out of it. That's great.
And then Glide for video communication.
What is it called?
Glide.
Glide?
So it's a video app that allows our property manager to walk through units, get a video, talk through, what items need to be fixed and so forth. And then, we can all access that. And we use that in our due diligence period to capture some of the items.
Yeah, we mainly use Glide for due diligence. So like he'll just walk through a unit with the camera and just narrate what he sees. And the advantage of it is that it's as soon as he hits stop, it sends real time. It sends to us, and we have a closed group, so all 4 of us will get at the same time. And it doesn't hold any space on your phone. So when you're talking about walking through a 58 unit complex, it's a lot of space, gigabytes or whatever. So it's all like cloud based. So we like it a lot. I've been using it for the last few years, and for the due diligence, it helps out a lot.
Glide, got it. Okay. Any other tools?
Yeah, project management. So Asana, we're utilizing that a lot. We actually have a call set up. Is it today or tomorrow?
Yeah, today.
Yeah, today. We're even going deeper into Asana and integrating it more into our processes. So it's a project management software. They have like free versions of it. We're still on the free version, so it's super robust. You can do a lot of things with it. We're really going to dive deep and build up and beef up our operations in Asana. So big thanks to Mike over at Jake and Gino. He jumped on a call and kind of showed me what they were doing because that's what they use. and really gave us some good tips to run efficiently. And the biggest thing is accountability. When it comes to anything project management, accountability is key. So assigning somebody a task and being able to assign it to them, set deadlines, give them the resources. And so since it's cloud-based, you don't have to worry about saving different versions of everything and uploading different versions and files. Everything's, you type it in, it automatically saves. And so it's an absolutely great platform. We're going full into Asana over the next couple weeks.
Love it.
Other than that, yeah, Jake and Gino. So the Wheelbarrow Profits Academy, just everybody there over the last year and a half has been crucial in our ability to scale.
Well, thank you.
Have the confidence. Yeah, well, that's how I know you, right? So this right here, right? So just being able to scale and have the confidence to move forward with your decisions. Know that you got them back and you got the experience. They're whatever you have, they've seen it and they have a fix for it or strategy for overcoming that obstacle. So huge thanks to them. But
yeah, crucial. Like even this networking community, this was built on the kind of the dare of Gino, if you will, right? Like his whole point to me when I started out with the Wheelbarrow Profits for 2 years ago was, hey, this is what you got to do to get to, your face in the market. You need to do this. You just, the make it happen mentality. And he gave me great ideas and it's built into this thing. And we've scaled to 40 units. One day we'll be Vince Gethings and Duke Ong one day. But the point is, like I couldn't say that I'd be where I am right now in the multifamily space or with this brand or anything without the support of a community like that. So I'm a big believer in masterminds for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
For books, we already talked about, I pulled them off my shelf earlier, but yeah, if you don't have this yet and you're doing deals, get this book. Yeah. Get it on Audible, get it in the hardcover so you can take notes. Like this isn't like a story. This is a textbook that you're going to read over and over and over. And just use it as a constant reference. The other one's Pitch Anything. Yeah. So Gino gave me this one, referred that one to me. Huge asset to have both of those books. They complement each other perfully.
It's funny on the
tactics and
on Never Split the Difference. You mentioned Steve Lyman, who sponsors the Michigan group, and he's operating 1,000 units or whatever. Yeah. He reads that book every year. To your point, so like to your point about it being a textbook, a guy that's operating at a pretty high level reads that book annually, as you just mentioned. So I think it's an absolute. I just read it for the first time. About done with it actually. I'm in the last chapter, but I absolutely will be going back to it. And I've leveraged it on small things already, just getting to know and mirroring and labeling some of these tactics. They work. It's crazy. So
yeah, I can attribute, I don't know, probably close to $200,000 through negotiating with the stuff I've learned in that book. So
worth the $20.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, and one of the negotiation steps for us, like after we kind of draft all the key points and facts, is to go back through and apply the Chris Voss filter to the email or the communication, and add in all those points and take out points and kind of edit it in that frame in order to apply the principles. So
I got to get that guy. I got to get that guy on one of our virtual masterminds one month. I got to get him on. He would be fantastic. I'll figure it out. I'll work it out somehow. I'll take one of his courses, whatever I got to do. He's incredible.
I'll show you something. I know, kind of off topic, but give you an example. Okay. Just I'm like geeking out over the Chris Voss thing. So when we were talking about our renegotiating for that deal, right? When people say like, "Oh, I'm going to prepare for the deal," right? And they jot down some notes. So this is our renegotiating stack. So it's you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages of notes and talking points and counterpoints and rebuttals and all that stuff to talk about a less than 1 hour conversation that we had.
Crazy. So
this is like the amount, and this is what he tells you in the book, like the level of preparation you need to have going into things. So we took 7 pages to prepare for a 1 hour conversation. So
insane. Good for you guys, man. And then you're proof positive. You got a deal done when many weren't. So,
Yeah.
guys, how do people get in touch with you, learn more about you, learn more about your company, so on and so forth? Where should they go?
TricityEquity.com is our website. So we have a link on there to learn more about us and kind of join our investor club. If you want to send us an email, it's connect@tricityequity.com. And we're also on Instagram @TricityEquity. My Instagram is duke.ong.realtor. And Vince?
Yeah. Honolulu Multifamily More. So Facebook group. We're on there. Come join the group, reach out that way. You can do my email, but
No, this is good.
That's the easiest way to get hold of me, right there.
And that is a group. What we're talking about now, like I mentioned, you did a video on this, you did a video on that. It's all there. It's all in that group. You guys put out some amazing content in there. So definitely a great place to go, and your group is growing like gangbusters. So very, very cool. Well, guys, thanks so much for jumping on today. I think I told you we'd do a quick interview, and there's just too much here to be quick. Yeah. This is a solid 45-minute hour interview, but too much here, and so many takeaways and learnings and lessons. A lot to summarize in the notes on this one. So thanks again for jumping on, guys, and good luck with this property.
Yep, thanks.
All right, thank you so much.
All right.